Welcome to Reno Radio. I'm your host, Naomi Finlay, Australia's renovation royalty. My podcast is all about real advice for renovating, designing beautiful spaces, tradie advice, and my weather to wonderful passion, where we interview amazing rural property owners who are turning their spaces from weathered to wonderful with great design and great renos. Creating beautiful spaces doesn't have to be hard. In fact, it can be one of the most rewarding things you ever do. So, join me and my impressive list of guests each week for plenty of feel-good, inspiring, and real advice. This is Reno Radio. Hey team, Naomi Finlay here, your rapid renovation expert. Today I want to talk to you about the money side of renovating and how to ensure that you manage your budget efficiently during your renovation. If you're already at pick up tools and go stage, then you'd have a pretty detailed budget in place already. But if you don't have a budget set out, please don't jump the gun and get in and start knocking down walls without having one in place. Instead, you first need to look at exactly what your renovation costs are going to be. So once you've got your budget all worked out, how are you going to filter in any changes? What if it turns out that you need to replace some old piping because they're rusted? Or perhaps you decide to extend the splashback all the way to the ceiling. Where's that money going to come from? How are you going to fit that in with the rest of your budget? All of these questions you might actually come across when you get further and further into your renovation project. So, you have to know how to stick to your budget, but at the exact same time, be flexible and go with the flow. How do you do that? Your budget is core to all of your renovation goals being met. And so it's essential that you master that technique. Now, the amount of money that you have to play with will determine the sort of renovation that you're going to be able to do. If you overstretch your budget, there's a chance that you're going to end up eating into your profits that you've calculated, which is not a winner. On the other hand, if you understretch it, then you might end up with, for example, a pizza with no topping. You might end up with a pizza with no topping when your customers or your target market actually want a super supreme with extra sauce and cheese. So here's an example. It turns out on your kitchen, for example, that the splashback tiles are going to cost $1,000 more than you'd originally set aside. I say that's bad planning, but either way, what are you going to do? Are you going to replace them with a more affordable alternative, or are you going to find some extra cash and bite the bullet? My suggestion in this situation is actually looking for a more affordable tile that doesn't jeopardize your overall look. Because remember, if you've decided on a look and you know that your target market wants that and you're aiming to deliver it, by taking the cheese off that pizza, by removing one of those elements, you could actually jeopardize your overall profit. But if you choose that you want to go with those original tiles and you want to spend that extra money out of your budget, then you need to work out where that's going to come from. You need to be able to, in a fluid motion, review and alter your overall budget to make it work. So how do you find that middle ground? Great question. That's why I have 3 steps to keeping my budget in check, and I want to share them with you today. I use these 3 steps to keep my budget under wraps when I'm renovating. Now, the first thing is breaking down your costs. So, realistically, there's a real lot of categories and a real lot of elements that cost money when you're renovating. So it can be really easy to get overwhelmed with a bunch of numbers, especially when there's a pile of zeros at the end of them. So what I suggest you do, rather than losing yourself in the numbers, is break it down into the big jobs. And then each of those big jobs, break them down into individual steps within it and budget each of those steps accordingly. So let's have a look at the category of demolition. It's a huge category, and some people may say that the numbers next to it can be a bit intimidating. So let's have a think about all the steps involved in it. How much is it going to cost you for your trades to knock down the walls? How much is it going to cost you for the skip bin to remove it? How much is it going to cost you for the skip bin hire and the dumping fees? What's the cost of cleaning the place after the demolition? Is there any asbestos? How much is it going to be costing to have that professionally removed and a hygienist certificate provided? So working out all of these little steps, you can see that you can better gauge the cost, and you can also better track the cost at each and every one of those steps as you're progressing through your renovation. No longer does it feel like a big and unknown enigma. Now, number 2, always have a buffer. I say this time and time again. You need to have backup extra cash available. Think about it like this. It's like when you freeze soup. If you pour too much into that jar and you put it in the freezer, without doubt, that container will explode and it'll be a nice mess in your freezer. Don't make that same mistake of squeezing everything into one of these renovations and you think your budget can handle it and you leave yourself no breathing room and you burst your budget. Sometimes things just happen that are beyond your control on a renovation site. And no matter how much you prepare, no matter how much research you did, no matter how many hours you spent going over that budget in detail and making sure everything went according to your plan, maybe a recent heavy rain has found an old tiny leak in the roof. Or maybe a random storm has broken a window. This is nothing that you could have planned for, and you can't just turn a blind eye to these things. So rather than ripping your hair out and being super distressed about your original budget being blown out of the water, prepare for those unknowns. Renovate with a buffer, a minimum of 15% of your total project costs. So when these unexpected things happen, you can play cool because you have a buffer that you can utilize to make sure everything goes well. Number 3, double, triple check your budget. The third step is all about monitoring skills. Unfortunately, budget, it's not a slow cooker. You can't put it on and then set and forget. Because you've written it down on paper, it doesn't mean that it's set in stone and that it's going to pan out exactly like that in real life. Instead, I want you to think about your budget like a baby. It needs constant care and attention during the renovation process. So it's all well and good to have a budget, but you need to, 1, stick to it, and you need to know what's happening in it. At worst case scenario, week by week on site. But I tell you what, a lot can happen and you can spend a lot of money on a renovation site in 1 week. So in the heat of things, I recommend you attend to your budget day by day, making sure that you have everything from council fees, tip fees, trade fees, loan repayments, absolutely everything included in there. And then that way, what you can do is you can make sure using something as simple as a spreadsheet, or you can have a look at the amazing Rapid Renovation Mate that's available to you all. You can track what you'd planned on the expense being, exactly what the expense was, and actually analyze at the same time why the variation is. Number 1, it can help you track your trades, track your spend. It can also help you learn a lot more about your renovation process and where you can tighten that up. Now, let's face it, you're all looking to renovate to create wealth. And so one of the things that's going to help you unbelievably in doing that is having a great idea and a great set of procedures and a great process around managing your budget. And all of these things are absolutely essential ingredients in making sure that you come in on time and on budget every single time. Thanks for joining me today, guys, on Reno Radio. It has been a blast. I would love it if you subscribed so you never missed a beat of this podcast. And naturally, let me know what you think. I love to hear everyone's feedback and reviews. If you'd like to know more about all the services and content that we produce at naomifinlay.com, then head on over to naomifinlay.com. You can also keep an eye on what I'm up to on my Instagram. You can find me there at Naomi Findlay Official. Until next time, team, enjoy.